When it comes to baseball as a sport, there are few players who stick out like a sore thumb. MLB legends like Al Roboski, Mark Fidrick, and Rube Waddle might have been obscure personalities, but none comes close to the level of weirdness displayed by Zack Greinke on and off the field. From calling a mound visit with his catcher mid-game just so he can discuss a fantasy football trade, to dumping Yasiel Puig's suitcase to the curb on his way to training, or refusing to throw his side sessions because he felt he didn't need them. Today, Zack Greinke might be a celebrated pitcher, but once upon a time he was nothing more than a talented rookie who is on the verge of throwing it all away. In today's video, we'll be taking a microscope at Greinke's life to reveal why he is one of the strangest baseball players in the game. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. To really understand how Zack Greinke earned the reputation as baseball's go-to oddball, we have to take you back to 2006, when the Orlando-born pitcher was on the verge of being dubbed a failure by all who knew him. Greinke was still new to the Royals team and had a hard time fitting in as one of the youngest players to make his mark in the majors. In the words of his manager, the 20-something-year-old was always shy and awkward in the presence of teammates. According to Greinke, he almost had a mental breakdown just from the stress of walking into the clubhouse and interacting with teammates. This made the higher-ups come up with a plan to ease his anxiety by housing him with Royals Hall of Famer George Brett. The plan made sense on paper, but the team didn't know that Greinke's struggle with social anxiety wasn't something that would blow off with time. As a kid, Zack's impressive performance earned him the nickname the future of pitching. With a nickname like that, you'd think that he'd been pitching all his life. But the 2004 MLB debutant actually started out as a tennis player who would cry before a game because he hated losing. Zack Greinke also played golf, but his one true love was playing shortstop, where he never hit under .444 during his 4-year high school career. During his sophomore year, Zack took a swing at pitching and quickly gained notoriety as the kid who threw 93-mile-per-hour fastballs against opponents who didn't stand a chance. Being vastly superior to his peers, Greinke got drafted in no time, and it set him on the course for an event that would shape his life forever. Before getting the call up to the major leagues, the stress was so much on Greinke he tried to run away from the Royals, and when that failed, he asked his manager if he could be sent back to Single A to play shortstop. Luckily, the Royals put a stop to his plans, and he arrived in Kansas City immediately, proving his worth on the field by outclassing other rookies in the game. By now, it shouldn't be news to you that Zack Greinke felt stressed by being surrounded by lots of people, but to other players, he was really weird. During lockdown, he would opt to sit by himself in between innings rather than interact with other players in the dugouts, and even sleep in his locker before games. You'd think that with Zack's shyness, he might have found it hard to let people have a piece of his mind, but the reverse was the case. To this day, fellow pitcher Pat Neshek couldn't believe what happened in 2017 when he asked Zack to sign some baseball cards for his collection. After agreeing to Neshek's request, things took a turn for the worse when the cards arrived and Zack refused to sign even one. A shocked Neshek confronted Greinke at batting practice, but the pitcher claimed he thought the cards were for former Diamondbacks pitcher Brad Ziegler, so he changed his mind. An enraged Neshek couldn't believe his ears and tried to get Greinke to sign them, but Zack simply said he wouldn't sign them even if his kid asked. Neshek was enraged by Greinke's actions, and he told anyone willing to hear that Zack was a socially awkward turd. One might think his skirmish with Pat Neshek was a one-off occurrence with an opponent, but he would go on to have problems with his coach and other players during his early years about how he would like to play baseball. On one occasion, he decided he wanted to be a regular in the starting lineup as opposed to pitching every once in a while. Of course, his manager opposed the idea, but Greinke had been practicing his swings at a local high school for hours and was adamant about hitting for the Royals. Fed up with the constant complaints, Greinke was given his chance in Arizona, which resulted in a beatdown that saw him give up 11 runs and 5 innings. Not being one to give up until he achieved his goal, Greinke hit a home run like he had promised his general manager before the game, but it wasn't enough to get him off the mound. And then tragedy struck. The once flourishing pitcher suddenly regressed to the point that his rookie stats felt like they were achieved by another person. He refused to participate in team photos and got into fights with his pitching coach after refusing to practice. At this point, his battle with depression and anxiety had reached an all-time high, and he headed over to his general manager's office to discuss getting help. But what he really meant was retiring from the sport. Years later, Greinke revealed that he had initially planned on retiring to mow lawn all day, since it kept him away from people. Fortunately, Zack Greinke got the help he needed after being diagnosed with social anxiety disorder and depression. and he got on the road to recovery. With his mental health issues out of the way, Greinke had to build his reputation from the ground up, since he didn't leave the Royals on the best of terms. He quickly began to make short work of players in the minor leagues, and when asked if he was ready for the move up, Greinke refused. He did eventually make his way to the major league, starting out in the bullpen, which made a reporter call him a sullen loner and an utter failure starter. While he was getting hounded by the press, George Brett took swipes at him by saying he needed to grow up. It surely didn't help matters when Zack had to apologize to his team after deliberately giving up 7 runs because he didn't want to waste good pitching. Even though it felt like Zack Greinke had enemies all around who wanted to see him fail, the general manager of the Royals knew that his pitcher was just a misunderstood man who battled with anxiety, and he cut him slack despite the backlash. Zack Greinke repaid his manager's goodwill by becoming one of the best pitchers in the game when he returned to the starting lineup in 2009. He dominated the stats, arguably becoming the best pitcher in the world, and he won a Cy Young Award to back up the claim. For most people, the Cy Young Award was a sign of accomplishment, but to Zack Greinke, it was just a burden he wanted to get rid of as soon as he could. He absolutely hated the fame that came with it and wished it would all go away. If you thought he was crazy for not wanting the award, you'd be shocked to hear his response to a reporter after they asked what the award meant to him during the off-season. Greinke's reply was, "I don't know. I've been playing this game called World of Warcraft and I haven't been thinking much about baseball." After slugging it out with the Kansas City Royals, Zack Greinke forced them to trade him to the Milwaukee Brewers, where the fans quickly found out that the pitcher wasn't like anyone they'd ever seen before. His battle with mental health issues soon became the only relatable things fans could get behind, because his activities on and off the field continued to confuse fans. He once got into a heated competition with Brewers teammate Randy Wolf on who could throw the slowest pitch, with Greinke winning the duel after pitching a 53-mile-per-hour curveball. Another aspect of Zack Greinke that people barely noticed was his fascination with his team's scouting department. His time with the Milwaukee Brewers saw him traveling with scouts to look up fresh talent, because it's what he calls a fun experience. While he was with the Royals, he constantly brought ideas to the front office to be implemented and would get furious if they weren't implemented immediately. It was during his time at Kansas City he once blurted out his plans of working as a trash man after retirement, which sounds crazy. He didn't spend a lot of time in Milwaukee before being shipped to the Dodgers, where he ended up getting in fight after fight. One of his most famous fights happened during his time with the Dodgers, where he had gained the habit of trying to hit batters with the ball. Carlos Quentin definitely wasn't in the mood to indulge Greinke when the pitcher hit him twice, and once he did it again, Quentin went in for the kill. But thankfully, he only broke Greinke's collarbone, which put him on the sidelines for 2 months. Not long after his return, he did the same thing to Miguel Montero as revenge for Yasiel Puig during their game with the Diamondbacks, which led to all-out chaos on the field. And while players and coaches were at each other's necks, Greinke took a casual stroll to first base. These are the kind of things that Greinke is known for, but he hasn't allowed his unique personality to stop him from dominating the game with his longevity and pitching stats that make you wonder if he's the second coming of Greg Maddux. There is no doubt that Zack Greinke will go down as one of the strangest future Hall of Famers the game has ever produced, and it's all thanks to his unexplainable antics and glorious pitches.